Okay, we want to get started, everyone? You ready? Okay,
let's do it.
Sounds great. So welcome, everybody. If you are returning, thank you for coming back for the very last P2P session of July, and we're excited you're here. If this is your first time catching us live, know that we have all of the recordings from the past few sessions up on our website. You'll get an email to that today, so feel free to check that out as well. So today is going to be all about each of you. We want to answer all your questions that maybe didn't get answered or you want clarification on from the past 3 sessions, or just anything else that's on your mind that one of my colleagues or myself can answer for you. So I'm going to kick things off with just letting each of our experts go through a quick overview of what their a synopsis of their talk from the week that they hosted us. So I'm going to start with Miriam.
Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see everyone. I'm glad all of you are here. So if you remember, we kicked off the session with pivoting for the career. And just to summarize what we covered, we shared the story of the Buddha and how it was covered with tar and mud. So the lesson from there is we do the same thing. And we have all these layers that we put on ourselves. So remove those layers and let the gold shine right through you. Then we went over the 6 C's. So the first 2 are to be able to be complete. Think about anything that has an emotional charge, and then be able to follow the exercise until you feel complete. Once you're complete, you can start creating. And really that is painting the picture and your vision of what you want, whether it's looking for a job, whether it's changing how you spend your time, whether it's changing a habit. What is it that you want to create for yourself? Then the next 2 C's are connection. Connection is very important. A lot of you ask, how do we influence people? You cannot influence unless you're connected. So being able to do that. And then the second C after that was the competency. You have to package your story with your strengths. What is it that you're able to offer in your current role at your company? Or if you're looking for a job, what is it that you're great at? The 3 things that you're great at that no one else can do better than you. And be able to sort of like put your elevator pitch together for 30 seconds and make sure you land that everywhere you go. The last 2 C's are change. And we know that whether we like it or not, the world has changed. And the only choice we have is how do we interpret and what do we make up of the things that are changing in this world. The story that we make up in our minds is either going to empower us or defeat us. And the last one is staying curious. Seeing things, including challenges and problems, from a place of curiosity. This is a framework that's going to help you no matter what you're facing. And, I see some of you that have done some of this C's process with me and have really found some rewarding things. So I look forward to this discussion today as we go more in depth into other topics that you're interested. Thank you, Misty.
That's great. All right, thanks, Miriam. And I think I've gone through your 6 C's quite a few times. I keep coming back for them, I think. Joni, why don't you kick us off next with your update?
Sure. So my name is Joni Goodman, and I want to extend my welcome to all of you. Welcome back to those of you who have been with us through the entire series. It's good to see some familiar faces, but also some new faces this week. So I had the privilege of delivering the leadership session on week 2, which was leading through uncertainty. And we have certainly been faced with a lot of that right now. But even before, I'm sure as we reflect, we have been faced with a lot of uncertainty. And in keeping with the tradition in corporate America and also within our organizations and nonprofits, we love our TLAs, our 3-letter acronyms. So I introduced you to a new acronym, maybe not necessarily a new acronym, but a new definition of the acronym, CPR. So we talked about the importance of communication in being an effective leader. We also talked about the impact of productivity. And there I introduced you to an SLA, a 6-letter acronym, is what I shall do on Monday. And then the R was relationships, which parlayed into what Leah covered also in week 3. So Leah, I'll pass it to you.
All right. So last week we kind of moved into more of the what do I do in my everyday life realm, and we talked about strengthening relationships. We started off with the 5 attributes of empathy, which are perspective taking, staying out of judgment, recognizing emotion, being able to communicate that emotion, and finally, mindfulness. We also talked about the fact that our emotions and the way we behave are sort of like an iceberg, that what we see and what we show other people, about 10% of that is what is above the water, but 90% of what is driving our behavior and our emotions is underneath the water. And we need to really dig in to figure out what it is that is making us show up either as angry or shut down. We talked about the foundation skills of listening, which are having the right attitude, being all in, paying attention, and then finally being flexible, because while we can script the conversation in our head, it doesn't always go that way. And so we need to be able to be flexible and move through the conversation if it takes a different turn. We talked about active listening, passive listening, and combative listening. And then we also talked about some Rumble starters and Rumble tools. And the final message, the overall message of everything was that, you know, we are more connected and more alike than we are different. And we just need to get curious, and we need to have conversations in order for us to be able to find what those commonalities are, as opposed to automatically looking at what makes us different. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon, who is our virtual producer.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let me just... All right, so before we officially kick off, let's have a few Zoom keeping rules today. And I also wanted to introduce, for those of you who may not be familiar with Zoom, we're also going to introduce instructions on how to use specifically the raise hand function. But in order to have a smooth flow today, please keep yourself muted. And your video is optional to be on or off during the session. We would, however, love to see all your wonderful faces. So we encourage you to keep your video on. So we all have new coworkers in the offices these days, spouses, children, roommates, pets, and we understand we may see some people in the background. We may hear a doorbell ring. We may hear some dogs barking, and that's perfectly all right. We encourage you to stay active. Don't let that deter you from participating today. Once Misty opens up the panel for your Q&A, we will have 2 ways of submitting your questions. One, you may type in chat. Everyone find the chat button at the bottom of your screen. When you open that, you'll see the option to send it to everyone, or you can use the drop-down menu and send it to me, Sharon Nasser, privately if you want to ask a question anonymously. You may type your questions. If you have if you're phoning in through your phone, then the chat box is on the 3 dots. You may raise your hand and then be prepared when called upon by Misty to unmute your audio and turn on your video if you're able to do so when you want to share. To raise your hand function, you have to open the participant list, and then you should see all those functionalities in the bottom when you hit more. So just for fun, let's try that out. Open up the participant box, go to the bottom and see the little box that says more, and then raise your hand. Okay, I see a few of them. Perfect. I see them coming through. I am your virtual producer today. I will be working the chat box, monitoring the raised hands as well as Misty. And then I will also be hopefully taking care of any, or hopefully not, but I will be taking care of any technical gremlins that seem to come up. So let me know if you're having any issues, and I will do my best to help you out there. We will ask that the participants have their smartphones handy for the end of the session. You will receive an email after today's session with a copy of the recording along with some other goodies, so be on the lookout for that. Also, don't forget to check your spam. We have heard that some of the spam filters are putting our emails into the spam box. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get this party started. I recommend that everybody put their speaker view into a gallery view. So on your screen at the top right, you should see an option for a gallery view. You may not see that if you're calling in through your phone, but if you are on a laptop or a tablet or a PC, hit the gallery phone. That way you should be able to see almost everybody on here. And with that, Misty, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sharon. And just, Sharon, thank you for keeping all of us on point the last couple of weeks. I don't know what we would have done without you as our virtual producer and just all around person that we lean on for everything. So thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, so we're gonna get started. I'm gonna open everything up. You guys start submitting your questions. Raise your hand, put it in the chat, send it to Sharon or myself. But we wanna know, anything's on the table, let us know what your questions are. So please start entering them in. And while you guys are doing that, I'm gonna take one of the questions that we received from the survey and do a little round robin with all three of my colleagues and get their take on this question. So our first question of the day is, how, in times of lots of change, how do you best address new expectations and stress levels? Okay, in times of lots of change, how do you best address new expectations and stress levels? Leah, what's your take on that?
So since I did the life portion last week, I think probably the most important piece of this is to address what is happening in a very open, clear, honest way. Some of you may see the shirt that I have on. This is kind of representative of me today addressing expectations in my particular world. I've been watching the funeral of Congressman John Lewis, and for me, it's super important to be able to say, this is where I am. And so as change occurs, if we get so uncomfortable with what is happening around us that we shut down, you know, we go to that 90% under the water behavior where we don't talk about what is making us uncomfortable or what is stressing us out, that is only going to grow and fester, and it's going to get worse, and it will affect everybody and everything around us. So putting it on the table, being able to recognize what you're feeling and being able to communicate that in an open, honest way. You know, we say clear is kind, unclear is unkind. I think for me, that is the key whenever we're under change and we have different expectations and we're under stressful situations. So.
That's great. Thank you, Leah. I appreciate that. That's wonderful. Joni, what about you?
So I would like to come at it from a leadership standpoint, since that was the area that I was tasked with in sharing my expertise. And I think one of the key words that stands out for me in this question is change. And so as a leader, you and all of us are leaders, whether we are individual contributors or we have direct reports, people working for us. But as an individual, you need to understand how you respond to change, all right? And get real with yourself on that. So are you an early adopter, or are you someone who kind of digs your heels in and resists new ways of doing things, innovation? It doesn't mean that you don't like it, it's just scary to you. So you as a leader need to understand, how is it that you respond to change? You know, when we were able to fly, the flight attendants always talk about put your own oxygen mask on first before you put it on your child or someone that needs assistance that's with you. So that's what you need to do with change as well, is first have that personal self-reflection of, how do I respond to change as an individual contributor, as a people leader. And then you need to have that conversation with your people as well. And clearly listen, use the skills that Leah talked about during her session and in her recap today, about really listening to understand how they respond to change, and acknowledging that not everybody is going to respond to change the same way. And so being able to have a conversation around that. And then the other thing is of CPR, the acronym that I introduced, communication. So over communication is key, especially now that we're all adapting to working virtually. So erring on the side of over communicating versus under communicating. And that's where you can make sure that there's clear understanding of the new expectations and really have a pulse for what's going on with yourself, with your people, with your colleagues, as far as the stress levels.
That's great, Joni. Thank you. That's wonderful. Miriam, what about you?
Boy, has the world changed, right? I mean, who would have thought, think about December, if somebody would have said, you're going to have to wear masks everywhere you go. For most states, you're going to work from home. Somebody would have said, no way, that's crazy. That sounds like a crazy movie, right? So the world has changed. I would say the first thing is make a decision. How do you relate to change? Is change happening to you, or are you leading change? Are you adjusting to change? So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to career and or whether you're running your own company, what's your value differentiator? How are you going to create massive value during this time? Okay, because a lot of companies are restructuring. A lot of companies are looking at how to reduce costs. Are you in a position where you know exactly how you're bringing value, how you're contributing? Are you volunteering to take on new projects? It has to be clear, your value proposition in a company. Be present. I think that a lot of the stress, the second part of this question was talking about stress, it's caused, like last night, it was like, I know I had this today and it was 4:30 in the morning and I was awake. And I was thinking, why can't I sleep? I need to sleep, right? Get my beauty sleep. And I thought, what is worrying me? What am I afraid of? What's happening? And everything that could come up was things that I was making up about the future, right? I just started doing some breathing exercises and I was able to finally go to sleep. Be present. We don't know what the future is going to bring, and the past is gone. We can only learn from it. And the last thing is have fun. Have fun no matter what you do, whether you're at work, have fun doing the things that you do. Allow yourself to experience joy. We're very good at expressing sadness, depression, anxiety, all of those things. But are we great at expressing joy? The thing that people ask me, what do you miss the most about the way the world was before? Honestly, hugging my parents. Like, oh my gosh, I miss hugging them. So what I do, since I cannot hug them now, is I find other ways, write them notes, bring them flowers, other ways to express that love so there's no gap, okay? So this is our time. Again, remember, if you are not leading change, change is on top of you and it's squeezing the life out of you. So get a hold of the change, make up your mind who you want to be and how you want to be, and take it on like that.
That's great. I love that. I think that so many times I feel like I have to ask myself in the morning, who do you want to show up as today? How do you want to show up? Who do you want to be? It's not that I'm trying to be someone I'm not. I'm just having to remember who I am and what I want to accomplish that day. So I love that.
And Misty,
So, yes.
I will piggyback on that. I find myself a phrase that I have added to my repertoire these days is, instead of I have to do that, is I get to do this. And that totally shifts the perspective.
I get to do another Zoom meeting. You know?
Renee, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's the one word that we worked on that made all the difference in your life?
Choose. I choose it.
That's right. That's
choose anything better than I have to, or I insist upon.
Very powerful. Thank you, Renee.
Yep.
I love that. I love that. Well, and Miriam, as you're talking, we had another question that came in for you that says, you mentioned in your session that you reinvented yourself 3 times. Can you share any obstacles that you had to overcome when doing that? And in hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently?
The number one obstacle I constantly have to overcome is myself. And what do I mean by that? Am I the imposter? Am I going to be good enough? Am I qualified to do this? Is this the right decision? All of that. Once I'm able to get in the right state of mind of saying, yeah, it might fail. Yes, it might be the wrong decision, but so what? I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to do it. So that's the number one thing that I constantly have to get over, is that. And how do I overcome that? how do I overcome that? Is by creating a future that is so compelling that excites me. I'll give you an example, okay? Most of my life I've been really overweight, okay? I'm talking about like very obese, where I had like headaches all the time. I just didn't feel good. And you know, I knew exactly why I had that weight problem. I love donuts. I love cakes. I love chocolates. And I ate a lot of it, okay? Yeah, sure, I could blame my genes or whatever, but I knew it was my choices. So I knew I had tried for years to make a change. And finally, you know, the shift was when I said to myself, I took a stand for a future that was more compelling. What is that future? I want to be fit. I want to be energized. I don't want to have headaches anymore. I want to look really sharp in nice clothes. And you know, what do I have to do to create that? So the future was so compelling that when the donut came calling, I was like, donut or future, compelling future. So I chose a compelling future, right? I'm happy to let you know I've lost probably about 55 pounds, and I've kept them off, you know, which is very difficult because guess what? When I'm stressed, when I'm sad, when I'm happy, I eat. And I eat the unhealthy stuff. So again, the compelling future constantly reminding me of that is what keeps me on track. If there's anything I would have done differently when I reinvented myself 3 times, I would have given myself more grace and compassion. The amount of energy and time that I spent beating myself up, having doubts, losing sleep, if I had channeled that energy into creating, whoa, you know, that's when real magic starts to happen. So whatever situation you're going through right now, channel the nervous, the anxious energy into creating something that is compelling and that will move you. Thank you for the question. That was great.
That's great. No, that's wonderful. Thank you. Another question we had come in was, how do I break the silo mentality and encourage communication and collaboration, especially in a remote work situation? Leah, do you have thoughts on that one?
Sure. So I think that this silo mentality kind of goes along with our comfort level with being around people who think like us, who act like us, who maybe live in the same manner that we do. And so we just get so comfortable with things that are not different. And we begin to see other things as threatening if they are different. And so being able to break this silo mentality and, you know, encourage communication and collaboration, I think we have to change our mindset, which is exactly what Miriam was talking about from a career and life perspective, what Joni's been talking about from a leadership perspective, and to not be afraid of what might happen if those silo walls come down. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I question things in my head literally all day, every day. And probably 90% of the time, those questions never make it out of my mouth. And so if I would really just pay attention to the things that I'm asking myself, or maybe the stories that I'm making up in my head, and I go and intentionally try to find the answers to those, that might be step number 1 in that communication process that would allow us to begin to see how we can work together, how we're more alike than different, what our strengths are when we do come together as opposed to separate apart. So when we're talking about a work situation like remotely, it is really difficult sometimes to feel connected on the computer screen. Or, you know, if we're having virtual meetings once a week or once every couple of weeks, we can easily quickly get into our silos. And so I think we have to take that extra step, extra effort in order to get down into that connection phase of making sure that just because we're so tired of being on Zoom or WebEx or whatever we're on for 20 hours a day, it seems like, that we don't get on and just try to get our business done and have no interpersonal connection. I think it's super important as we try to break down the silos that we don't only meet with our own team members. And so if we have influence in our workspaces, how can we draw in other departments or other teams that affect our work and we affect their work as well, and bring them into the conversation virtually, as opposed to we have our meeting, we pass it on up, they have theirs, they pass it on up, they have theirs, they pass it on up, and then somewhere up here is where decisions are made and conversations are held. You know, bring in the larger group in order to have those conversations.
Leah, if I can just, sorry, Misty, if I can just add on to that, in thinking about this whole remote work situation, and I'm a glass half, anybody who knows me knows that I am super positive, glass half full. Yes, I do live in reality, and I was kind of in a funk for the first 6 weeks of this whole lockdown, but I'm always looking for what is the good that we can take this situation and make of it. And so this whole virtual work environment has really allowed us to be able to open up and have access to people that we may not before as easily had access to, especially if we were asking them to, you know, physically get in the car and drive somewhere to meet with us. So aim higher, shoot bigger, reach for those individuals that you are, many of us are, some of us are transitioning back into the office, but we're all primarily working from home. So reach out to that high level leader and ask for a meeting. They don't have to get in the car and drive anywhere to meet you. It's a virtual 30 minutes to get together, to jump on a Zoom call or a phone call. You don't even have to do a video call. That's the other thing. You know, the expectations have somehow flipped these days, that since we are working remotely, that what was once a conference call now is expected to be a video call. And so we all are sitting a lot. So being able to mix your day up and have phone calls with people as well, but reach out to those folks. I mean, the worst they can say is, I don't have time today or this week, or it may be a couple weeks down the road, but be brave and courageous and reach out and use this in this environment that we've been placed in for good and for positivity.
That's great, Joni. And you know, I'm so glad that you said what you said about this is actually an opportunity where you may get to talk with people that you normally wouldn't, because I think a lot of people, and I've even had this in my own thoughts sometimes, it's almost the opposite. A lot of the questions that we had come in said, how do you reach other departments and reach the C-suite, you know, or other leadership when you're not in front of them? You know, if you're not walking by the CEO's office on your way to grab coffee every day, how do you get in front of them? So I love that thought process you have of thinking that this is actually a way to get in front of them even more so than if you were in the office. So I think that's great. And I think just, and it all goes back to connection too. What I find is what I found in my past is that anytime that there was a silo, it also usually had to do with ego and self-esteem, right? That we didn't feel like I made up a story about who they were or how they thought I was, right? And so by knocking down those barriers and realizing that we're all connected in some way, and we're all just trying to do the best we can, that's really helped me in the past break down silos, and be, you know, more productive personally and professionally. So just a reminder, you guys send your questions in. We're taking them live in addition to the ones that we've received from our survey. So type them in the chat, raise your hand if you want to ask live. So keep doing that, please. And then one of the questions we received, and Joni, I'm going to punt this back to you, because the question is, how do you keep motivating a team for positive change?
Keyword there, that change thing keeps coming up, right?
It's hard for
on it. How does that keep happening? And so the positive part is where I want to hone in on this time, because we've already talked a bit about change. And so really understanding that the way we used to work is different, right? As Misty was just mentioning, and as Miriam and Leah have all touched on, we don't have the propensity to have those informal conversations like we used to when we were in the office. So we need to schedule and make time for those. And I know the last thing we want to do is, right, have another meeting. Like, I have so many meetings now, I don't want to have another meeting. Okay, so call it something different. A Zoom happy hour, a Zoom connection point, a touch point. And there's no work, there's no discussion. It's just those same kind of conversations that we would have when we showed up to early before a meeting. You know, how's your family? How's your dog? Where have you traveled recently? How's the weather? Whatever, having those informal conversations with one another, making time to do that and being intentional about doing that is going to help to continue to build those relationships that you have. And this is especially difficult, I know, on some previous calls, and some folks sent in the survey about onboarding individuals, new people to a company right now is really challenging. So making time for those informal connections. And then the other thing about change, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but knowing what your emotional response as well as your team's emotional response. So what physically happens to you when we're working the way we've been working, or there's a project that gets delayed, or there's a reorganization or a restructuring. So what happens to you physically that lets you know that you're getting emotionally hooked? What are the thoughts that go through your mind? What actions do you take? Are you somebody who is like the hailstorm and you're clobbering onto anybody that gets in your path? Or are you more like the turtle where you go back in your shell? And then what stories do you start telling yourself? Miriam mentioned that about she's reinvented herself 3 times, and one thing that she would change is, you know, how she was with herself and having a little more grace. So what are the stories that you're telling yourself, and what are the stories that your people are telling themselves? And actually talk about that with one another. So make time for that. And going back to what I covered in my session with CPR, the productivity, you're thinking, Joni, you're adding more meetings, you're adding more time that I don't have. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you don't take the time to do those things that I just spoke about, your productivity is going to be very much affected in a negative way. All right, if you don't have conversations about those things and connect with one another, your productivity is going to decrease. Actually, I know it seems like, what, more meetings? That this seems counterintuitive, but I can assure you that that's what will happen if you don't make time to have those connections with one another and have that awareness about what happens with you emotionally and with your team as well.
That's great, Joni. And you know, we've heard so much. From friends, from business colleagues, from everyone, of people trying to figure out how to keep the culture in their organizations, to keep that positive change and keep that momentum going. I got an ad come across LinkedIn the other day, and I think I sent it to this team, my colleagues, and it was, you know, because as we've talked about, businesses form in hard times, right? This business has formed that actually does virtual team building and culture growing events. So I will add that to our resource. I can't remember the name of it now, but I'll add it to our resources on our page, because I think that's another, to your point, Joni, if it doesn't have to be a meeting, it can be a coffee, it can be a conversation. This website has created a whole bunch of different virtual culture building activities. So we'll add that. Miriam, I'm coming to you next. We got a question that says, with so many job fairs going virtual, how can I market myself better, come across positively, and make an impact when interviewing virtually?
Okay, thank you for that question. So it makes me remember a client I work with. She had been at a financial institution for like 25 years in a leadership role. She decided that she wanted to leave that role and start with a different career. And so we worked through that. And then months later, she came back to me and said, and she looked defeated, like the weight of the world was on her. She said, you know, I still haven't found an opportunity and all of that. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is, how are you showing up? Are you feeling defeated? Are you feeling frustrated? You need to check that. Okay, so that's the first thing. When I saw her, I said, you look defeated. Even the way you talk is not the same. You look tired, you know? Be intentional. Even if you're feeling those things, you have to be intentional in how you show up. I'm going to show up with joy. I'm going to show up with strength because that's going to make an impression. Smile. I mean, we're not face to face, but do you feel my energy? Do you feel, that my engagement because of your voice? Yeah, I see Heidi there saying yes. So when you show up for an interview, don't show up like a robot. Hello, and very scripted. Throw the script away. Become engaging. Your number one job in a virtual interview is to connect and discover what their pain points are. What is that company trying to solve? What is that company trying to change? And how does that position that you're interviewing impact that? You must be able to capture that. The second thing you must land is they must be able to know what they have in you. Don't confuse them. So for instance, Cheryl, I'm just going to make it up. You're interviewing and you're going to say, what I bring to the table is I know how to hire and keep very talented teams. The way my teams perform, we always exceed goals. And number 3 is I'm a lifelong learner with constant innovation, great communication skills. So when you leave the interview, I know exactly what I have in you, right? So that's how you stand out. I tell you, I have done hundreds, if not thousands of interviews, and the people that stood out in time and that I hired was when they left and I said, they got me and I got them. It was 2 humans having a conversation. It wasn't a robot being scripted, Create the story you want to land on them, connect with them, get them to really be engaged, and also create a sense of urgency. Don't sound desperate. Say something like, I have several interviews lined up. I am planning on landing something where I can really contribute in the next 30 days. I really enjoyed this interview. I really enjoyed meeting you, Joe. An interview is also about finding out who the person is. Ask them, how long have you been with the organization? What is it that you love about this organization? I read your values are this and this and this. Those are amazing values. Tell me how those values come into play in your organization. So those things are, I think, and can I see the question again? Or I want to make sure I cover everything. Okay, so marketing yourself, be real, energy. Okay, the other thing is virtual. Invest in nice lighting. Invest in a nice camera. Don't
this
look
is
like
all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, look, let me show you.
Light.
I mean, this is our ring light right here. Okay, right there. Invest in one of those. They're like $50, $45
cheaper,
on Amazon.
You can get them cheaper on Amazon.
And do you think this all happened by chance? No, our stools make us look slimmer. So we decided to be on tall stools, We have an external camera. We're not using the camera that comes with the computer unless you have a brand new computer. So invest in a camera. You're going to spend maybe $100, but it'll be the best $100. I also use a microphone when I do classes because my projection of my voice is completely different. So do that. Make sure your background is nice. Don't put anything distracting. The interview is going to be the best way you show up. So make sure you also dress nice, all of those things. And that's how you're going to make a big impact.
So Miriam, if I can add, also remember and don't lose sight of the fact that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. All right. And know before you go in, what is your ideal work environment look like? All right. And is this place going to fit the bill? And if not, use it as a learning experience, but really know that about yourself and know that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Exactly. And also when you have to know the culture of that company. If it's an edgy, innovative company, wear a superhero t-shirt and stand out. Don't go with a tie, right? Don't go with a full suit. Get to know that. That's how you're going to stand out. They're going to remember that crazy lady that wear, a luchadores t-shirt. Maybe, but if it doesn't fit the culture, it's going to be a bad memory. They're going to know, I don't want that person, right?
I think that's good. And Joni, I think those are some really good points. And that a lot of that comes from not having a scarcity mindset, right? When you have abundance and making sure that it's the right fit for you too.
That's right. That's good. That's
So
a
I
good
love
point.
that. Yeah.
Oh, just to finish my story, the lady, after we had that session, she found a job within the next 2 weeks because her mindset changed. When you're hooked on the bad things, there's no possibilities to figure it out. So she now has a very nice position that she loves. Okay.
I love that. Yeah,
Sorry
that's
about
great.
that.
Okay, Miss Leah, I'm coming to you with our next question. So I think this is a great one. So it says, we have talked a lot about empathy, feelings, communication, and relationships. I'm wondering about the panelists' thoughts on tension in the workplace. How can we identify and work through that tension with our peers, a manager, or individuals we work with?
All right, so let me ask each of you a question. You can just either give me a thumbs up, raise your hand, show me on camera, whatever. When there's tension in the room, how many of you know that? Okay, so that is not a surprising thing. So if you know it, guaranteed everybody else knows it. It is super important not just to be able to recognize it for yourself, but to have a process that you can go through that is a process that everybody agrees on. And if you don't have a process, then, you know, look into talking with somebody who can teach you a process of having these difficult conversations. Because if I'm coming from one place with one set of assumptions and my style is to come face to face with you. If you're not that person who is comfortable having face-to-face confrontation or interaction, we're not going to get anything solved, are we? So in order for us to take our own personal behaviors out of the picture and be able to move through tension effectively, we have to be able to take every single person and put them in a process that works. And so what I mean by that is when we talk about the rumble starters that I talked about in the last session, if we have common language, we can start that conversation. If we all agree on the rumble tools of what's my part, we can start that conversation. It's super important to make sure that if you are the leader of the group, that you are modeling what is happening, or if you're the leader of the team, that you are modeling the behavior that you want other people to participate in. But I think understanding that we all think, work, and act differently, and until we come to a place of common ground, agreed upon ground rules, which would be our process, you are going to have less positive results in trying to break that tension than you would if you can say, hey, as a team, as a company, as a whatever, here are the 5 steps that we go through. Here are the 3 steps that we've agreed upon in order to have difficult conversations. There is a great, I think I talked about it last time, Crucial Conversations. In the back of the book, there is a part, actually, it talks about coaching for crucial conversations. And it actually talks about what is the principle, right? Start with heart. What's the skill? Focus on what you really want to say. What's the crucial question? What am I acting like I really want? If everybody has the exact same ground rules, then everybody can walk in and play the same game. But if I'm playing baseball, I can't come onto the football field and have an effective baseball game, right? So you have to be able to work under the same set of rules.
Leah, that's great. And you know, you mentioned the rumble starters, and that's immediately what I thought of when you started talking about this. And for those of you who don't know, the rumble starters, they actually come from Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. And so I have to selfishly promote my friends here, because Leah, Joni, and Miriam all have Dare to Lead workshops coming up very quickly. And so we've included those on our resource page too, because those rumble starters and walking through those tough conversations has really helped me in the workplace to ease tension. So those will be on our page too. We had a hand raised from Jennifer Morgan. Are you with us, Jennifer? Do you want to pop in and ask your question?
My hand raise. Hello, yes, I'm here. My hand raise was actually in response to Leah's question, and she said wave or raise your hand. And
I got you.
I had left it up longer than I realized. That's all.
I
Okay.
love it when people follow directions.
Yes, I do too. Okay, well, so let's go to our next chat question then. And I like this one, and I'm sure we've all had this example or this happened to us before. So it says, relationships between various generations. How do I help supervisors stay out of judgment, help them understand the difference in viewpoints between a longtime employee, 30 years with the company, and a 30-year-old? Improve communication. Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that one because I do a lot of retention work and generational work. So, so whenever we're looking at different generations in the workplace, I think it's very important to know how were they raised? How did they grow up? What are the commonalities? So baby boomers grew up with a very traditional mindset. Gen Xers were the latchkey kids. You know, we had to figure it out on our own. Millennials, who are now almost 40, by the way, they were raised in a much more handheld way, right? So those of us who were older Gen X parents and baby boomers, we wanted to protect our millennial kids from some of the pain and suffering and downfalls and failures that we had. And so we held their hands a little bit more. And Gen Xers, we don't really know, or Gen Zers, we don't really know a ton about just yet. But when we are really talking about the different generations in the workplace, it's super important to know where they're coming from and to be able to ask the questions, how were you raised as a kid? How were you raised in the workplace? Because that really makes a huge difference in how you're going to lead others and how you're going to interact with others. You know, for the baby boomer or the Gen Xer who is coming in and they've got somebody younger that's going to be working with them. If they were raised with a figure it out for yourself or a sink or swim mentality, they are going to likely teach that new employee the exact same thing, or they're going to treat them in the exact same way. So as leaders, we need to be careful and watch how others are being treated as they come into the workplace.
I think that's a great answer. And if I may add for this question, it's, you know, how do you help people stay out of judgment? You have to make them realize they are judging. Most of the people that are like the supervisors, they're not aware that they have a filter or a lens into which they're viewing the world. So I would encourage you to have some type of exercise where you say, do you realize that how the world occurs to you may not be how the world is? You see the world not as it is, but you see the world as you are. So I would create that. The second thing I would do is I would do an exercise of gratitude and appreciation. Get those 30-year-olds that you're talking about to write 3 things that they love about their supervisors, and get the supervisors to write 2 to 3 things that they really like about their younger employees. Start fostering that, as Leah was saying, that environment of commonality, gratitude, and appreciation. The other thing is, whatever practice you have, here's one thing, one value that you should instill in your company, in your business, and you should measure it as part of your performance reviews, as part of being a good employee. And that is the commitment of being for each other. So let's suppose that Leah, Joni, Misty, and I, we have a company together. And Joni comes and talks smacks about Misty, you know. I would say to Joni, I appreciate your feedback. If it's something that is like gossipy or whatever, but remember, one of our core values is being for each other. And I want to ask you, Joni, are you being for Misty right now? You know, and have that, always shift it from emotion to business, okay? So that you have that. So start by creating awareness that there are judgments and filters. Number 2, create gratitude and appreciation. And number 3, instill into your core values, being for each other. There's a whole course that we do on being for each other and a 5 functions of high performance team, which is really good.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And I think it's challenging with different generations. You know, I used to have a supervisor that told me, you don't show up well unless you're the last one to leave after the boss, right? And that was a very maybe older generation way of thinking, whereas my younger team members were like, can I work from home and do I have to see you every day this week, right? And so I think it's like you have to, I think good culture in a company is meeting your teams where they are. If you have good performers and they're not morning people, or they like to leave a little early to get home to pick up their children, I think it's working and finding that balance too between the generations to get the best productivity out of everybody. So,
and to piggyback on what everyone has said, I'm going to take it back to communication, because communication is the foundation of all that we do personally and professionally.
Yeah.
And so having that conversation amongst generations, what is your preferred way of communicating? Do we need to have a video call now, or when we're able to have a face-to-face meeting? Or can we do a phone call? Can we email? Can we text? Do we do Yammer or Slack, those Slack channels? And is that how we communicate with one another? And so really asking, what is the preference? All right. And knowing that that is also going to be influenced and shaped by the generations. And in exercises that I've done, I found that there's actually more similarities in preferences for communication amongst generations than one might think. We think that these Gen Z and the millennials, all they want to do is they text each other in the same room. When you get them actually to collaborate together and talk about it, face-to-face comes up. They may not ask for it, but that is something that is a preferred way, a method of communication. So I think that you'll find that there's more similarities, and to be intentional about how you're communicating and what you're communicating about. Do we need to have a meeting, or can I send it in email? Do I need to pick up the phone and have a conversation with someone, or can I just shoot them a quick text?
Joni, I think that's great. And I'll just add this before we go on to our last question. I had a CEO a couple of years ago who came into the organization new and actually had meetings with each of his leadership team members and spelled out, this is when I prefer text. This is when I prefer face-to-face communication. This is when I like email. And him letting us know that he was okay with text, or when he preferred an email, or when he preferred you to pop in his office, was so helpful in opening those lines of communication up. And I just thought, wow, we just assume things, whether we can or can't text, or if it's appropriate. And it was really great for him to give, his team permission in direction, so that we set us up for success. Okay, so this last question we have before we run out of time is also about communication. So Joni, as you said, there's a common theme with all of this. And so that question is, one of my favorite quotes I took was, communication is a dance of engagement. What are specific and good questions to ask the team to do this and adapt also to this environment? I heard some personal questions mentioned, but also interested in professional good questions. So specific and good questions to ask the team and also adapt to the environment when it comes to communication. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And who wants to take that one? Miriam, you want to start?
Sure. That's a great quote, by the way.
I know. Communication is a dance of engagement.
I even remember the slide. Yeah. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I think everybody wants to share about their future. So good questions to ask your team members is around development questions. Joe, let's sit down. I like to schedule some time to talk about your development goals. What is your career trajectory that you are thinking about? Really listen. It's not for you to solve, it's not for you, but it's to really listen, support them, and be their cheerleader. The other questions is, Joe, what are some of the challenges that you are facing in your current position that would really make a difference? If we're able to partner and work on those things, that would accelerate you. Joe, I want to find out more. You've been here for a year. And you're a very valuable part of the team. I want to talk about, what are some of the things that you've learned in the year that you've been here that you would tell other people? How do you feel engaged with the team and the organization? Development questions, because guess what? If you ask somebody, if I ask you, Angie, tell me about your development, you're going to feel like I care for you. Like I know I want to be in tune with what's important to you. So I would say those are a really good area, broad area, and good questions to be able to engage in that communication dance.
That's great. I love that. I love that. Okay, so I hate to say this because I feel like this time has gone by so fast, but we have 5 minutes left. So we have a few other things that we want to show you guys. So I just want to say everyone on this team is open to additional questions one-on-one. If you want to shoot us an email, shoot us, send us something on social. This is how you can connect with us. We're all pretty much all across the board. You can get all of our emails on the Prepare to Pivot page where you signed up. And so if we didn't get to your question today, or you have something that comes up, just shoot us a note. I know we're all happy to walk you through anything you need. Sharon, can you go to the next slide? Okay, and on top of that, here's just kind of to keep your journey going, right? Once you pivot, now what? And so we've listed here just some of the areas that each of us are well versed in, if you will, that we have a lot of experience in. So, as I mentioned, the Dare to Lead workshops are coming up. All 3 of these women that I work with are amazing coaches with development, leadership, career, and life. So feel free to reach out to them. If you need help with marketing, your personal, your profession, I'm here for you. And so you'll see we have this QR code up. What we're going to ask you, and Sharon, I'm going to have you help me with this. They need to scan this code, if they don't mind, to take a survey and give us some feedback, right?
Correct. You just pull out the camera on your phone, hover it over the code, and it should pop in a little pop-up with the internet address, and just click that. Or I have also put it in chat for you to click on.
We would really appreciate your feedback. If today's your first time, you're still certainly welcome to complete the survey. If you've been with us all 4 weeks, we are just immensely grateful that you would give us an hour of your time today, or 4 hours if you were with us the past 3 weeks. We're just so grateful that you would dedicate some time to spend with us, and we welcome your feedback, and we're here to support you. So anything that you're going through, please, as Misty mentioned, reach out to us. We're here.
And I think, so as you're doing the survey too, I think, Joni, we talked about, we'd love to, we love to know that we're in community and that we've worked together to pivot forward. So if you have a chance, just share with us in the chat what landed with you from today's panel or doing one of the series presentations. Send us a quick note in the chat and let us know, what your favorite moment was. And I think once we do the survey, send us that chat. So we'd love to develop these programs and continue them. So letting us know what landed and what helped you will help us develop the next series. So let us know. And I think that's all we have, right? Leah, Joni, anything else?
Yep.
Yeah, just please complete your survey. And once you're done, just send us a note in chat as far as what landed with you today or throughout the series.
And I just want to say thank you all so much for participating. It really means a lot to all of us to know that what we have to offer is valuable to you. And thank you for being so honest with us in the questions that you submitted. It takes vulnerability to ask a question, especially of people that you don't know. And so thank you for being vulnerable and trusting us with those things that we can help you with. So appreciate it so much.
Okay. All right, thank you guys so much. We'll sit on here for just another second if anyone's filling in the chat, but feel free to take the survey, do the chat, and then get on with your day. Hopefully your Zoom fatigue is not fully present yet today. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And Misty and Miriam, I know that the person who asked that question about communication is a dance of engagement. they were very grateful. You helped them a lot with your answer, Miriam.
Oh,
Okay.
great. Thank you.
That's great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Joni, I feel like we need some music to take us out.
I know, right?
That's great.